Good job, ladies. Right there. Nope. Yes.
Hello, editing Katie here, just popping in to say thank you so much for 5k. It feels slightly ridiculous that people will be interested in me rambling about books, but I'm so thankful for each and every one of you and I appreciate it so much. I am like the most sporadic poster ever, but it always, like, it means a lot when you chat with me in the comments, and yeah, I just appreciate us all, you know, building a community to chat about books. We love books over here. And so I thought that because we've reached 5k, it would be a good idea to do a little Q&A. So if you have any questions, they could be book related or not book related, either or. Just post them in the comments down below and I will film something soon. And again, thank you so much. It really means a lot to have this lovely community here. Like, it warms my heart. I just spilled my drink down me. Cheers. It's sparkling water with a little bit of green juice, so I'm hoping it doesn't stain. We'll sort it later. This is clearly more important. We've hit the midpoint of the year, so I thought I would do a little check-in with my reading stats and some of my favorite books that I've managed to get to. Yeah, I feel like I've read quite a lot of good books this year so far, specifically non-fiction. So let's start with the stats. Number of books, glasses. Number of books, 43. I think my goal is 60 books. I do a number goal every year, even though it doesn't really matter that much to me. I more care about reading books that I enjoy, really get something out of, start a conversation, just books that enrich me in some way rather than like the volume of books that I've read. I am a slow reader, but I carve out time to read. And I feel like 60 is like a good number because it's more than one a week, but it doesn't feel like an unattainable number. So yeah, my goal is 60. I've read 43, so I think I'm ahead by about 12 books, which seems about right given that the past year I read 70, I think. So I think my kind of like reading pace is about the same. Yeah, that doesn't really surprise me. My top 5 moods this year so far are reflective. That's always my number one mood when reading. So we've got reflective, informative, emotional, challenging, and dark. Again, no surprises. I feel like reading this, there really isn't many surprises. I feel like I'm a very, I'm quite a predictable reader when it comes to my stats because I know what I like and I tend to mostly stick with that. Okay, so pace. Slow, 31%, medium 45%, and fast 24%. This doesn't surprise me at all because fast being the smallest percentage, that's normal for me. I don't really like a fast-paced, zippy book. It's just not my thing. Medium 45%, I would say. I'm not drawn to a medium pace, but it seems that most of the books I read tend to be of a medium pace, and I feel like that's just like most books in general tend to be like quite medium paced, quite average paced, not too zippy, not too slow. My preferred pace is slow. I like a slow burn. I want it to be drawn out. I want to get lost in the details, and I feel like books that are quite reflective and challenging can kind of be on that end of the spectrum, and that's definitely what I like the most. Page number, so less than 300 pages, 72%, and 300 to 500 pages, 28%, and nothing over 500 pages. I feel like 300 pages is like the sweet spot for me with a book. It just feels like it's enough. There are some books that I've read that are much longer that have worked, or very short and they've worked, but I kind of like feel like 300 gives me enough to like sink my teeth into something, but doesn't feel like it's like never ending, and doesn't feel like it's like, oh, that it's over. Okay. I feel like 300 is good. No more than 500 pages so far this year. I do like a chunky book every now and again. Last year I read Bleak House by Charles Dickens, which was like over 1,000 pages, and that felt like it would never end. It was indeed a bleak set of affairs, and I think that maybe gave me a bit of a distaste for chunky books. But yeah, maybe later on in the year, I think I tend to like reading really big books either during summer or during winter, so we'll see. My fiction to non-fiction ratio is usually like really heavy on the fiction side, with like maybe about a quarter being non-fiction, but this year I told myself that I really want to read more cultural criticism, art criticism, and like political writing, and so it's kind of gone up a bit. So my fiction is 56% and my non-fiction is 44%, and I'm fine with that. I don't want it to be exactly 50-50 because I am a novel girl through and through. I love a novel. It's my favorite thing to read, so I don't think that's ever going to swing in the opposite direction and have me being like much heavier on the non-fiction side. But I feel like I'm doing well with like meeting my kind of goal of reading more non-fiction and being engaged in like cultural writing and art writing. And then my top 5 genres are literary fiction, essays, contemporary writing, feminist writing, and art writing. I feel like that's very much just me, you know, in a nutshell. I'm not surprised by any of that. Literary fiction is always my top genre. By the way, all these stats are pulled from my story graph, and I love data, and so it's really pleasing for me to like see everything laid out in like charts and stuff. I would recommend it if you are someone who likes like to visualize all your data, because it's so simple. It's like such an easy format to, you know, gain information on how you're reading. Yeah, I'm not surprised by any of that, not massively blown away or caught off guard. I feel like I will be progressing the exact same throughout the second half of the year, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. I don't imagine anything changing much. And okay, my favourite books of the year so far. I thought I would do a top 10, and this isn't in order of, like, I'm not ranking them in my favourites, I'm ranking them, it's just in the order of what I read, so chronologically. My first favourite, actually most of these are non-fiction, so that kind of surprised me. But yeah, my first book, On Freedom, 4 Songs of Care and Constraint by Maggie Nelson. We did this for my book club, and it was really enjoyable to do this as a group because there is so much in it. Freedom is a very multi-layered topic, and Nelson really dives into that, and she divides it up into 4 songs, and they are art, sex, drugs, and climate. All really interesting topics, all approached very differently, and I feel like this is a really good book if you want some smart kind of cultural writing. I would recommend reading it with someone because you will want to talk about it. We wanted to talk about this so much in my book club that we ended up having to schedule another Zoom meeting so we could chat even more. It was really good. That was a great experience. I'd highly recommend it. Then I have Lovebug by Daisy Lafarge. I mentioned this in my last video for summer reading recommendations. It is a work of non-fiction that explores literature and microbial life and love and desire and just how impactful the meaning of words can be. It's a weird little freak of a book, and I really enjoyed it. Another non-fiction, Sister Outsider by Audre Lorde. It's a collection of essays, speeches, poetry by Lorde, who has the most engaging voice I have read in a long time. It just, I read this over a long period of time because I wanted to draw out. I kept dipping in and letting myself read one essay or one speech or one interview, and then I would just sit with it for a while and think about it, because I felt like I was taking in a lot, and it felt right to not kind of greedily gulp it all down, but to just let it sit with me. And yeah, I can't wait to read more of her writing, especially her poetry. So hopefully more of that later this year. Another non-fiction, The Other Side, A Journey into Women, Art and the Spirit World by Jennifer Higgie. This is a book that delves into the art world and women artists who were kind of hidden behind the men of the movements that they were in. And yeah, it unearthed a lot of really incredible artists that I hadn't heard of before, and then also covered some that I really love. If you like art writing, then I would suggest it. Is really beautiful. They Can't Kill Us Until They Kill Us by Hanif Abdurraqib is an incredible blend of cultural writing, music criticism, and memoir. I did this as an audiobook, and I feel like his narration, because the author narrated it, his narration really made it for me. He's also a poet, and it just his narration drew out the rhythm and musicality of his writing, and it was a great experience. Oh god. Okay, next, Marigold and Rose by Louise Glück. This is a very slim novel about the first year in the life of identical twin girls, and it was some of the sweetest, most tender writing I've ever read. I absolutely loved it. It was delightful. I don't know whether I had a specific affinity for it being an identical twin girl, but it's just so beautiful the way that these two characters, who are infants, they are babies, their voices are so different, and they're learning to communicate with one another. They're trying to communicate with their parents in the outside world, and they're trying to decipher all the information that's coming in. And it's just a perspective in writing that I'd never really come across before, reading from the perspective of newborns to 1-year-olds. And yeah, it was so sweet. Then I read My Death by Lisa Tuttle, which was a book for you if you like reading about women and art and kind of an uncanny vibe. It really drew me in. It's very slim. I kind of devoured it. And I just felt like there's kind of a play on the unreliable narrator and who's telling whose story, and what to believe when it comes to history about certain figures, and how public life and personal life can often differ very much. and yeah, I just really liked that it had that uncanny edge to it. Prairie Dresses Art Other by Danielle Dutton is such a strange little amalgamation of texts, and it kind of does what it says in the title. So the first section, Prairie, is very very short stories that center on life in the prairie, and they're filled with anxiety. Like, her writing is absolutely gorgeous, but there's definitely an anxious tension that's like weaved through all of these stories that I really recognize within myself. And even reading the first couple sentences when I opened the book, I was like, oh, I'm going to love this. Like, I knew immediately that it was going to be a favorite. The second part, Dresses, is a list of quotes from literature that are about dresses, and that was really interesting because I was reading through them and I was like, I recognize that one, I recognize that one, and then it gave me some books to like go put on my list to read later. And you know, I love when there's intertextual references because then I'm always seeking out new texts. The third section, Art, was about ekphrasis, the art of writing about art, and yeah, it was a really good essay. That might have been my favorite section. And then Other, which really is just other, is like miscellaneous writing. Again, we come back to the really short narratives that are infused with anxiety. And yeah, I love that strange little collection. There was a really good interview that I listened to with Danielle Dutton. I think that was with LA Review of Books. I'll try find it, and if I do, I will link it below, because I thought that was a really good accompaniment to reading the book. Another nonfiction, Committed on Meaning in Madwomen by Suzanne Scanlon. This is a memoir of Scanlon's life, from her mother dying at a young age to her father remarrying and trying to integrate herself into a new family and not really quite being able to do that, to then moving away to New York for university and again kind of feeling herself floundering and not fitting in, to then her voluntarily committing herself to a psychiatric ward and life in the ward and then life afterwards. I thought that this was so vulnerable and so honest, and Scanlon finds a lot of she finds what's the word reprieve, no, a validation. There's a lot of love for women writers who have being deemed hysterical in the past, that she has read and they've resonated with her, and also just like her love of literature kind of pulling her through everything, giving her something to come back to, fueling her own passion for writing. And yeah, honestly, I saw a lot of myself in that book, like having trying to integrate yourself into like a mixed family through divorces, really struggling with anxiety, not really being able to connect with your peers at university, and like finding a lot of, there's that word again, what is the word I'm looking for? Solace, finding a lot of solace in literature and writing. I really love that book. I did it as an audio, and it just felt really, it honestly felt like a privilege and honor to hear Suzanne Scanlon herself like narrating this. Like, she was really opening up and sharing her life with you, and it is beautifully vulnerable. Obviously it's quite upsetting given the content, but it is a really beautiful book. And lastly, on my list, I have The Wall by Marlen Haushofer, which I did not know how this was going to go for me, because I texted my ooh, that's a squeaky chair. I texted my book club group chat and was just, being nosy, like, what's everybody reading at the moment, which I pop in and do as often as I can because I like the book gossip. And then I said that I was about to start reading The Wall, and I had a couple of people get back to me and they were like, I tried to read that, it was so boring. And I was like, oh god, like, am I going to get really bored? Because I have a habit where like I just can't DNF a book, and like that's a conversation for another time, but I cannot bring myself to do it. So I was like, oh my god, like I've read the first couple of pages, so I already feel committed. And I was really worried that I would get bored, and I completely understand where that comes from for people, but luckily for me, this was such a slow burn of a book that was just very meditative and almost repetitive in a way that was like, it was soothing almost, even though the whole story is that a wall descends within a forest, and on one side the world kind of stops and people die and nature takes over, and then on the other side a woman finds herself alive, and she's, you know, not with any other humans, and she has to try and figure out how to live her life. And I thought it was a gorgeous book. Like, it moved me really, really deeply. She has this beautiful connection with the animals that are around her and with nature, and yeah, I think I just also really needed it when I read that book. I can usually tell how bad or how good my mental health has been, given how many books I'm reading. And I read that in June, and it was the only book I read in June, so I was really not doing okay. And I feel like that book kind of, you know, got me through. It was very slow, and yeah, it was exactly what I needed at that time. And if I would recommend it to you only if you are prepared for a very slow moving book that doesn't really have a plot. So all the kind of like drama like happens right at the beginning, and then this woman is just kind of left with time stretching in front of her, and she's just like, how do I keep going? Like, how do I keep myself alive? How do I keep these animals alive? It's all about survival, and she really muses on what she's lost, and if she really feels like she's lost it, or if it's just like been let go. It's just something that she can walk away from, and now this is what her life is, and calls into question you know, societal norms, relationships, pressure, external pressures, internal pressures, and how they affect our lives, and, you know, like what really matters and what doesn't. And our time here is finite, so it is better to focus on, you know, what helps us survive rather than what drags us down. And I really loved that book. So if you like my recommendations, usually I would pick it up. So I am very curious to know what your favorite book has been so far this year. And then if you want to start some drama, you can tell me your biggest disappointment this year. Like, which book did you read and you were like, well, that was shit? Like, I want to know your favorite and your least favorite. And if there's any book that you're like really excited to get to for the second part of the year. I'm very excited to read Julia Armfield's new novel, Private Rights. I read Our Wives Under the Sea last year, and I loved it. Or was that this year? No, I think that was last year. Anyway, I really, really enjoyed it, and I'm so excited to read her new novel. I think it's kind of a bit apocalyptic, and three sisters come together and they're trying to sort out their father's estate, but they unearth some like tensions beneath the surface. I think that's what it's about. It sounds really good, and I'm very excited to read it. I'm also really excited to read Lauren Elkin's new novel, Scaffolding, which is about two couples that occupy the same apartment in Paris, but like years apart, and how their lives kind of intertwine. And yeah, that sounds really great as well. But yeah, happy reading. I will see you very soon.